You know that feeling like when your Wi-Fi signal just vanishes?
Huh?
1 second, you're connected, scrolling, feeling like you've got it all handled, maybe feeling on top of the world.
Totally connected.
And the next, just nothing.
Yeah.
Disconnected, scrambling around. Suddenly, everything feels really frustrating, like it's completely out of your control.
Yeah, that sudden jolt, that sharp reminder of how fast things can flip.
Yeah.
It feels, well, incredibly relevant right now, doesn't it?
It really does. Life in 2025, it often has that feeling, that constant, like, background hum of fragility.
Yeah, undeniable. We build things up, we make plans, we kind of assume a certain level of stability.
Right, you have to function.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then bam, some huge global crisis flares up, or maybe personal challenges just knock you sideways, or
Mhm.
even just a headline that rocks your sense of safety.
The world definitely feels like it's spinning faster, and maybe the ground underneath feels a bit less, well, solid than it used to. So, the really big question that kept coming up for us as we went through this material was, faced with all this uncertainty, this um, intense fragility, how do we actually find any kind of balance? How do we even start to make sense of it?
And what jumped out at me, looking at the sources we explored, is that some of the most, let's say, resonant answers might not be the newest ones, not the latest tech or trend.
Right.
They actually seem to come from, well, ancient wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Ideas rooted really deep in India's traditions. Philosophies that have somehow managed to last through centuries of upheaval.
Philosophies that have seen fragility on scales we can barely comprehend, and yet they stuck around. They endured.
Yeah.
So our mission then in this deep dive looking into these sources is to really unpack what these ancient ideas offer. How do they stack up against the whirlwind of modern life? Can they genuinely give us practical tools for navigating all the unpredictability of 2025?
Let's see what insights they hold for handling this modern sense of fragility.
Mhm.
And you really don't have to look far to feel it right now. I mean, the concept itself isn't new, right? Life's always been delicate, precarious. But something about 2025 seems to amplify it. Maybe it's just the sheer volume of information constantly hitting us.
Could be, or the interconnectedness. The problem anywhere feels like it's right here, right now.
Yeah. Or maybe just the cumulative stress we're all carrying around. It feels
It
intense.
feels visceral, yeah. And the material we looked at, it brought up some really gut-wrenching examples that just drive this home. Thinking about that terrible Air India plane crash in Ahmedabad just recently, June 12th, 2025.
Oh, awful. 241 lives.
Yeah.
Just gone in an instant.
Devastating. And then, right in the middle of that unimaginable tragedy, the material brings up this almost unbelievable counterpoint. The story of Ramesha Vishwaskamar,
The man who walked away.
who somehow walked away from that wreckage, injured, limping, but alive. His words were just, I got up and ran. It's a moment that just stops you. It makes you ask, in that kind of absolute chaos, when everything is literally shattered, what is it? What holds life together for that one person? Is it purely random chance? Or is there something else at play?
It's such a stark, immediate reminder of how life can just pivot
Yeah.
in a single second.
Exactly. But this fragility, it's not just confined to these sudden, awful personal tragedies, is it? We're seeing it play out in huge systemic ways, too.
Absolutely. The material really zooms in on the Indian Ocean, the fact that it's warming faster than ever recorded.
Which directly threatens the monsoon system, something India has relied on for, well, millennia.
And this isn't just, abstract climate science talk. The consequences the sources point to are immediate. They're profound.
Yeah, things like unpredictable rains that just devastate agriculture, fiercer cyclones hitting coastal communities, critical fish stocks just
Vanishing.
plummet.
These aren't just environmental issues in a box. They strike right at the core of existence for millions. We're talking food security, economic stability, a whole way of life under direct threat.
So the question becomes, when the very ground beneath you feels this shaky, when the huge systems you depend on are visibly trembling, how do you find your footing? How do you build resilience when stability itself seems to be dissolving?
And this is exactly where these ancient traditions, the ideas we looked into, they start to speak quite loudly.
Mm-hmm.
The Vedas, the Upanishads, the great epics like the Bhagavad Gita, the Ramayana.
Yeah.
The way they're presented here, they don't feel like dusty old religious texts. They feel more like these incredibly robust, time-tested frameworks, manuals almost, for navigating life's built-in instability.
Like operating systems designed for chaos.
Kind of, yeah. Offering perspectives, practices for dealing with all the ups and downs while trying to stay grounded. And the first really key concept that jumped out was impermanence.
Impermanence. And again, some traditions, it's woven so deep into India's spiritual and philosophical fabric, isn't it?
It really is. It's that fundamental truth, maybe uncomfortable sometimes, that everything changes. Everything is temporary.
Your job, where you live, relationships, even the tough times you're going through or the good times, they won't last forever. They will change.
Exactly. The Upanishads touch on this too, sometimes using that idea of Maya, which doesn't necessarily mean life is fake or an illusion in that sense.
Right. More like,
More that our perceived reality is constantly shifting. It's fluid, like a play of forms. It's not fixed or solid in the way we often desperately want it to be.
okay, so accepting this, what's the actual practical benefit? It sounds a little bit depressing, maybe, on the surface.
Yeah, it could seem that way. But the insight here, as it's presented, is that accepting impermanence isn't about becoming, like, detached or cynical. It's framed as a source of emotional liberation, of resilience.
How so?
Well, if you truly internalize that change is the only constant, then when things inevitably go wrong, say, a business fails, a relationship ends, big plans fall apart, you're maybe less likely to be completely shattered by it.
Because you weren't expecting permanence in the first place.
Exactly. You acknowledge the change, you feel the pain or disappointment, sure, but you don't cling so desperately to how things used to be or demand that they stay the same forever.
It gives you a bit of breathing room, maybe, to think, okay, this is hard, this hurts, but it's not the final word. This situation, like everything, will pass or it will transform.
Precisely. It allows for adaptation. And think about the Indian Ocean crisis through this lens. Even nature's rhythms, things that felt like the definition of permanence, are proving to be impermanent on this massive scale.
Yeah.
The ancient perspective doesn't just allow for this change, it almost anticipates it. And crucially, it seems to push towards active, intelligent adaptation rather than just, lamenting what's being lost.
Adaptation based on seeing the new reality instead of just fighting it. Like, okay, the old fishing patterns are gone, so let's explore genuinely sustainable methods. Or let's harness renewable energy from the ocean itself because the climate is changing.
It's about engaging with the change, not just being passively swept away by it, which flows quite naturally into the next big concept from the material, Dharma.
Dharma. Okay, this one always feels a bit complex. Duty, purpose, righteous living. How does the material frame Dharma in a way that helps with this modern fragility we're talking about?
It seems to frame Dharma primarily as finding your, let's say, essential role or purpose in a given situation, and then acting in alignment with that purpose.
Yeah.
Doing it right, with integrity, regardless of all the external chaos.
Okay.
The classic example, of course, is from the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna advising Arjuna. Arjuna's on the battlefield. He's facing his own family, totally paralyzed by doubt and despair.
Right. A moment of extreme fragility for him.
Absolutely. And Krishna tells him, essentially, your Dharma, your duty right now, is that of a warrior fighting for what's right. But here's the crucial insight Krishna offers. Focus on the action itself. Focus on fulfilling your duty with integrity without getting attached to the specific outcome.
Okay, that's key. Because in a world where outcomes are so uncertain, the startup might fail. The climate crisis won't be solved overnight, focusing on the integrity of the effort itself. That gives you a kind of inner stability, doesn't it?
Exactly. Your internal compass, your alignment with your own sense of right action, that becomes the anchor, not the unpredictable, often volatile external results.
So how does that translate to 2025? What does living your Dharma look like now?
Well, the material pointed to examples like Shashi Tharoor, in his role chairing that Parliamentary Standing Committee on External Affairs, leading that multi-party delegation.
Right, trying to rally global support against cross-border terrorism.
Yeah, that's taking on a really difficult duty, isn't it? A kind of collective Dharma. Uniting across political lines for a significant cause, even though success isn't guaranteed, and the path is incredibly complex. It's about standing up for a perceived right.
But it's not just for politicians or big public figures, presumably.
Oh, absolutely not. The material suggests it's very much in the everyday, too. Living your Dharma could be the simple, quiet integrity you bring to your work, showing up for your family, being honest in your dealings.
Choosing to recycle because you feel it's part of your responsibility.
Exactly. It's about playing your part, whatever your role is, however small it seems, with diligence and purpose within the larger scheme of things.
It feels like it's about recognizing you have agency, you have a responsibility, even within a huge, complex system, rather than just feeling like a tiny, helpless cog.
Precisely.
Well,
Which, leads us directly into the next big concept, karma.
karma, the principle of cause and effect, right?
Yeah.
Actions have consequences.
Yeah, consequences that ripple outwards. The universe's feedback system, basically. What goes around comes around, you reap what you sow. All those ideas.
Okay. How does that apply here beyond just individual actions?
Well, the material really emphasizes that this isn't just about individual destiny or fate. It's very much about collective responsibility. Think about the warming Indian Ocean again.
Right.
It's presented not as some random stroke of bad luck, but as, in part, a consequence of collective human actions. Our global carbon footprint over decades, our approach to waste, our consumption patterns, all of it adds up.
So the fragility we're experiencing now, particularly with the environment, is kind of collective karma playing out.
That's one way to look at it based on these texts.
Yeah.
But the flip side, the really hopeful and actionable side of karma that comes through, is that small positive actions create positive ripples too.
Ah, okay. It works both ways.
Yes. The ancients seem to understand the huge power of seemingly minor deeds. Planting a tree, supporting local sustainable businesses, choosing to reduce your plastic use. These aren't just trivial gestures. They are seeds of positive karma. They contribute to a different effect.
That's actually quite empowering. It means even when we're facing these massive, overwhelming global problems, our individual choices still matter. They still contribute to the larger pattern. We still have agency, influence.
Exactly. We're not just subject to effects, we're also creators of causes. And finally, there's one ancient practice that feels almost uniquely designed as a lifeline for the kind of hyperstimulated, often overwhelming reality of 2025.
Let me guess. Mindfulness.
You got it. Mindfulness, rooted so deeply in traditions like the Yoga Sutras. It's essentially about bringing your full, non-judgmental awareness to the present moment.
Paying attention, really noticing what's happening right now. Sights, sounds, your own breath, your thoughts, your feelings, but without getting totally swept away by them.
And in our current world, saturated with constant news alerts, endless social media feeds, relentless distractions, mindfulness feels less like some lofty spiritual discipline and more like a basic survival skill.
Yeah, it's so easy to get lost in doom scrolling, isn't it? Just completely overwhelmed by the sheer volume of crises, tensions, anxieties.
Mindfulness is presented as the antidote to that overwhelm. It anchors you in the here and now. It's about consciously pausing, noticing your breath, maybe feeling your feet on the ground, bringing your attention back to immediate reality.
Instead of letting your mind spiral off into catastrophic futures or endlessly replaying the past.
Right. And it's not about sticking your head in the sand or ignoring reality. It's about facing reality, but with a clearer, more focused, less reactive mind. Interestingly, the material even highlighted a modern example of this focus at the Indian Army's 77th Army Day celebration.
Oh yeah, in Pune, back in January 2025. What was that again?
They used AI-generated images to retell epic stories from the Ramayana and Mahabharata.
Wow, that's a fascinating blend. Ancient stories, cutting-edge tech.
Exactly. It's like a form of mindfulness of heritage. Deliberately paying attention to and engaging with these deep cultural roots and traditions, but using modern tools to bring them alive in the present. It's a way of grounding yourself in a shared story, even while navigating a high-tech world.
So practically speaking, for us living through 2025, mindfulness can be really simple, can't it? Just deliberately carving out a few minutes each day to unplug.
Definitely. No phone, no notifications, just being. Noticing the sounds around you, the feeling of the air, your own state of being.
Choosing to be mindful instead of just having a mind full of noise and worry all the time.
It's a deliberate practice.
Yeah.
Reclaiming control over your attention. And that in itself is a powerful act of resilience in today's world.
Okay, so we have these incredibly deep concepts: impermanence, Dharma, karma, mindfulness. They sound powerful, but maybe a bit abstract. How do we actually weave them into the practical fabric of our daily lives in 2025? How do we make them work?
I think it's about translating them into tangible actions and shifts in perspective.
Yeah.
So faced with unavoidable change, like the warming ocean, embracing impermanence isn't just shrugging your shoulders.
Right.
It prompts action. It means actively supporting those adaptation initiatives, maybe marine conservation, maybe investing in wind energy. It's about working with the changing patterns, adapting intelligently, much like coastal communities always have, but now with a conscious eye on long-term sustainability.
Okay. And finding your Dharma in the daily grind.
That becomes about looking for where you can act with integrity and purpose, right where you are. It doesn't have to be some grand world-changing gesture. It could be mentoring a junior colleague at work, volunteering locally.
Speaking up for something you believe in, even if it's uncomfortable.
Exactly. Or simply doing your job with real care and honesty. It's about those consistent small acts where your intention aligns with your action. That builds inner resilience.
And remembering karma, starting at home.
Yeah, remembering that every choice ripples out. Reducing waste, supporting local producers, taking the time to educate yourself on issues like India's vital blue heritage, our oceans and coasts. These things matter. They contribute to the collective effect. It's empowering to know your choices aren't meaningless.
They have an impact. And finally, practicing mindfulness. That's about making that conscious choice to be present.
Scheduling those few minutes to unplug. When you feel that wave of overwhelm, starting from the news, from worries, just taking a few deep breaths, bringing your focus back to your immediate senses. It's a practice, like building a muscle, to find clarity amidst the noise.
So why does grappling with these ancient ideas feel so particularly important right now, specifically in 2025? What makes this moment different?
Well, this moment does feel particularly charged, doesn't it? Especially here in India. We're navigating this huge population, 1.46 billion people. We're seeing significant demographic shifts, like that dipping fertility rate everyone's talking about.
And we're dealing with really complex global tensions, things like the discussions and power dynamics playing out at the Shangri-La dialogue, alongside dealing with deeply affecting local tragedies, like that Ahmedabad crash.
These aren't abstract issues happening somewhere else. They're real, immediate challenges impacting lives, communities, our collective sense of stability.
Yeah.
And the insights from these ancient traditions, as presented in the material, they don't feel like just, interesting historical footnotes. They feel like a vital, practical toolkit. A toolkit for cultivating the kind of deep resilience we really need to navigate this era.
They teach us how to face fragility, maybe not with despair, but with a kind of grace. Is that the right word?
Grace, or maybe just acceptance and clarity. How to act with purpose, even when the outcomes are completely uncertain. How to find meaning, even when everything feels chaotic.
They seem to fundamentally shift the perspective, don't they? Reminding us we aren't just passive victims swept along by events.
Exactly. Our awareness, our choices, our actions, our very presence in the moment, they make us active participants.
Yeah.
We co-create how we experience this unpredictable journey.
So we've taken this deep dive into these really powerful ancient concepts: impermanence, dharma, karma, mindfulness. And what's truly striking, I think, is how incredibly practical and relevant they feel for getting a handle on the complexity, the intensity, the undeniable fragility of life right now in 2025.
Yeah. Applying this wisdom, it's obviously not a magic wand. It won't make problems disappear.
Yeah.
But it does feel like gaining access to centuries, millennia of accumulated human insight, distilled into perspectives we can actually use for today's unique challenges.
It doesn't make life any less messy, that's for sure, or less unpredictable. Things will still happen that make absolutely no sense sometimes.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
But perhaps embracing that inherent fragility, choosing to act with intention and presence, maybe finding ways to bring a little mindfulness into the mix, and maybe not taking it all quite so desperately seriously all the time.
Yeah.
Maybe that allows us to see this whole unpredictable ride not just as something to be endured, but as one incredible, wild, and ultimately meaningful journey.
With the right perspective, maybe it really is. So as you go about your day, navigating your own unpredictable moments, maybe just pause and ask yourself, what does truly embracing life's fragility look like for you? What's one small step you could take today?